Very good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of Robert's philosophy, and today we're going to learn the concluding part of the analysis of the case, the chapter number 9. We have started with this chapter, and where he has tried to explain the importance of symptoms. He has not explained only the analysis, but along with analysis, he has tried to explain the evaluation also. So, what is the importance of analysis or categorizing the symptoms into different groups of symptoms? That's what he has told first. And he has explained that if you get a totality of the symptoms, but which is just a numerical totality, which is not of any help. But if you get the characteristic totality with the help of which you can go ahead and find it out the individuality. And for that purpose, where this where these characteristics are hidden, that also he has tried to explain. It might be hidden sometimes in location, sometimes in sensation, sometimes in modalities, sometimes in concomitants. So those are the symptoms which are very essential for you in order to come to the remedy. Sometimes, which is not logical, always helps to find it out a remedy, because that becomes a queer symptom, and queer symptom always helps in such process. So this is what he has explained. We were on page number 87. Let us go with last paragraph of page number 87. In considering the value of symptoms in solving any chronic case, we cannot do better than to take these aphorisms for our guide, and to remember that those symptoms which confuse the ordinary physician, or which he regards as useless or as having no relationship to the case, are the very symptoms that furnish the clues to the remedy. So many times it happens there are certain symptoms in your case which are not at all logical, which are not at all explaining anything, but which are present very specifically. And those symptoms generally gives you a right remedy, on the basis of which you can go ahead and you can depend, because those are symptoms which are specific to that individual. They are not common to the all people. Concomitants are like that. Concomitant symptoms are always unique symptoms, and that's why they helps or gives clues to find out the remedy. In considering the value of symptoms, there are certain symptoms that are apparently caused by the conditions and that almost precede the symptomatology and seem to give a basis for patient's condition. These may be exposure to cold, these may be exposure to weight, all those conditions of which people say that thus and so was the cause of their illness and cause of their symptoms. These play a large part in pathological prescribing. In pathological prescribing, these causes of disease loom large. In homeopathic prescribing, they do not loom as large, save as showing the tendencies of the patient. So what he is explaining? He is explaining that many times patient explains that this might have started because of this. This is patient's thought regarding the disorder. Specifically, if the disease is chronic, these are only the prima causa morbi. These are very superficial causes of the disease. So that is not a condition which you have to consider. Yes, for acutes, it might be. If the patient is suffering from acute and it might be because of getting wet in rains, it's okay. But for chronic disease, such causes are not the actual causes. In chronic diseases, the causes are always hidden in the dynamics. They are always hidden in the miasms. And that's why what Hahnemann says over there, at the same time, the H. Roberts says, these are the causes which never directly gives you a clue to the remedy, because these are very superficial. This helps to find it out remedy for acute, but not for chronic. This embraces causes that are directly traceable to diet as well as climatic conditions. Embraced in this category are also the susceptibility to diseases, disease conditions, and idiosyncrasies. The symptoms that are produced by trade conditions comes in this category, and poisonings that may take place from too much drugging or from working in metals. The symptoms produced from such conditions may be valuable in showing pathological trend of the metal or gas or drug, causing the condition, but they do not show the finer differentiation nor have any they the same value that they do from the exhibition of the potency. So whenever you get any material cause behind the disease, what he says, they are not so important. If a patient comes that he has a burning in stomach because he has consumed the combiflam tablet or any painkiller tablet, so this is not the real cause of the disease. That might be a temporary cause of the disease for that condition, but it is not the sole cause of the disease. So these are things which will not going to help in order to come to the prescription, because these are not finer products. Why this disorder has started, why the patient is having acid peptic disease since last 1 year, it is not because of single drug. There might be many of the causes which you have to take into consideration. At the same time, you have to go to the root cause where it is hidden in the miasms. If you are able to catch that, and if you are able to treat that with proper antimiasmatic remedy, then you can remove the disorder properly. With the superficial causes, you are going to palliate the condition, but you are not going to cure the patient. Sometimes these early symptoms will place the physician in a position to see clearly the basic miasmatic conditions from which the patient is himself suffering. This should be this should bear large place in evaluation of the symptom. See, this is one important thing which he is explaining. Sometimes these early symptoms will place the physician in a position to see clearly the basic miasmatic condition. There are certain symptoms which comes out and which reflects these are miasmatic features. Those reflect certain specific entities on the basis of which you can catch, yes, this might be a clue to the miasm. If you get certain miasmatic features, those are essential. For example, a patient is having an ulcer, chronic ulcer since long time with large lardaceous base with irregular margins or everted margin with lot of slough, very offensive. And if you able to watch, you can find this might be a ulcer of syphilitic miasm. If you are able to catch that, then you will able to understand, yes, your remedy should cover that specific entity. If you are able to find it out, those miasms, then your remedy becomes very perfect. This should be a large place in evaluation of symptoms. This too brings up question of infectious disease and symptomatology attending the so-called contagious disease. It is the duty of the physician to take very close observation of the first cases. He has an epidemic of infectious diseases. For the symptomatology of each epidemic is distinct of the epidemic, while the next epidemic will have entirely different symptomatology. Immunity can be assured to the patients if we will closely observe the symptomatology and select the epidemic remedy in every stage of each epidemic by administering the epidemic remedy as the prophylactic. In this way, the symptomatology of epidemic diseases is exactly valuable to the homeopathic physician. Epidemic diseases, your approach is rather different. If specific epidemic starts, it starts showing its own influence on the patients. Epidemic diseases are always caused because of acute miasms. This is the terminology Hahnemann has used for the viruses, for the bacteria, for the parasites, etc. Acute miasms are, it depends upon the virulence of acute miasm, the disease has to develop. So if acute miasm is strong enough, then definitely it affects, even though the susceptibility of the person is normal, patient can get affected because of that. And that's why in acute diseases which are either epidemic or endemic, your approach remains rather different. First approach in order to treat is same. That is finding it out, totality of the symptom, taking the case and finding totality, then analysis, then evaluation, then coming to the right remedy and prescribing it right potency. But if epidemic is going on, it is your duty. What Hahnemann have said in the fourth aphorism, you should be a preserver of health. In order to preserve the health of the healthy persons from the epidemic, you can come to the conclusion of remedy called as genus epidemicus. And genus epidemicus is the remedy which is found on after examining hundreds of patients of the epidemic, finding it out common traits of that totality, which are presenting the epidemic, and the remedy which comes out through that representation is the genus epidemicus, only for the purpose of prevention, improve the health of the person, you can give that remedy. It is not the remedy which will going to cure each and every patient. You in some patients suffering from that epidemic, the approach is always individualistic. But in order to prevent the mass on mass scale, you can reach to a certain specific remedy, and that remedy used as a preventive medicine in that patient. This is called as a genus epidemicus. So don't get confused because, regarding the genus epidemicus. What has happened in COVID-19, I came to the conclusion of arsenic album. My first post was published, and later on people started explaining about arsenic album. But arsenic album was not curative. Arsenic album was only a remedy which can be used as a genus epidemicus for the purpose of prevention. It is many people have tried to cure the patients of COVID with arsenic album and they failed. Every case is different. So whenever the disease happen, then you have your approach is always same in homeopathy. You have to find it out a characteristic totality, find the simillimum for the same, and give that remedy to the patient. So approach is always same, but only in order to prevent the diseases, your approach is finding it out a remedy for the epidemic, and that should be given only to the healthy persons to prevent from the or to remain healthy from the diseases. Then he says, in analyzing the case, very valuable symptoms are those pertaining to the aggravations and amelioration. Now he is turning toward the modality, because the aggravations and ameliorations are natural modifiers of the disease states and are the definite reactions of the man himself. We must take into consideration that every symptom of note has these modifying conditions of aggravation and amelioration as to the time of the day, the time of season, the time of the moon. The aggravation and amelioration from thermic conditions, from motion or rest of the part affected or of the condition as whole, from lying down or sitting or standing, or the positions taken during such conditions, waking or sleeping, or aggravations or amelioration from such positions and circumstances. The desire, the various positions, motions that aggravate or ameliorate, the desires or aversions to eating or and drinking, especially in feverish conditions, aggravation from certain foods and drinks. All these are all modifiers that are of utmost importance in evaluating the symptom. So now he comes to the conclusion that third important entity which modifies the symptom are the modalities, and that makes the symptom more characteristic. If you have a symptom, just a fever, it doesn't have a significance. There are thousands of remedies for fever. But if patient explains that he had a fever, but he doesn't have a thirst, then you come to the very conclusion of very few remedies. If it is associated with throbbing headache, then again you come to the right remedy. So these are things, the modality always makes it more clear and more finer. So modalities, whether they are aggravation modalities or amelioration modalities, they always helps in order to come to the right remedy. So earlier he has mentioned about the concomitants, now he is concentrating about the importance of modalities. Those students who are attending the session, just write over there on one side, importance of modalities in homeopathy. You can write down the short note on the basis of that. And many examples he has mentioned regarding it. Next, he says, while we cannot hope to cure a patient without strong general symptoms, yet conditions of aggravations or amelioration may in themselves become generals if they appertain to in the same way to several parts of the body. They then become conditions of man as a whole or general symptoms, even though they seemingly express themselves in local parts. For instance, if the headache is aggravated by motion, if the pain in the knee is aggravated by walking or stepping, if there be a pain in the shoulder from raising the arm, then the aggravation from motion becomes general as a whole, although it seemingly appears in dissociated parts. So there are many more types of modality. Sometimes they are related with the motion, sometimes they are related with the temperature, sometimes they are related with the time, sometimes they are related with the causes. There are many more. Every modality has its own importance. There are time modalities. Lycopodium has 4 to 8 aggravation. The Thuja is having 3 am, 3 pm aggravation. Cedron is having 4 am chill. Every remedy, arsenic album, 12 noon, 12 night aggravation. So modalities have a lot of importance in your case. They defines exactly the state of the person. And that's why, along with concomitants, if the modalities are strong, your case becomes very strong and it, it shows you a proper individuality. The contradictory symptoms have an importance. Another point which he highlights, if in your case, contradictory symptoms are present, because they may rule out many other remedies that otherwise might be considered in connection with the case. That is, symptom that decidedly opposite to the provings, like thirstlessness of fever, epignasia, or epis, or pulsatilla, when fever is present, or when other symptoms agree. Contradictory symptoms may have strong bearing in choosing the remedy from standpoint of being themselves symptoms. Just as a paucity of symptoms may be symptom in itself, as has been brought out in the provings of the so-called do-nothing remedies, which are often called for profound states. For this reason, if you cannot find a remedy because of alternating or contradictory symptoms, or for very lack of symptoms, take these conditions as indications for symptoms of the very first rank. So now he gives, if in your case there are symptoms which are contradictory to the state, means they are absolutely opposite if we consider by the logic. So during the chill stage, the patient is generally thirstless, but this patient is thirsty. Or during the heat stage, patient should be actually thirsty, but patient is thirstless, contradictory. There are many contradictory symptoms you can get in ignatia. Patient hears better in the noises, but he cannot hear when there is a quiet environment. This is contradictory. And if such a symptom is present, it is called as a contradictory as well as it is called as a queer symptom. And such types of symptoms are very, very essential because they individualizes the patient. So what he says, if there is nothing like mental general or any specific symptom, these symptoms might be taken as a first rank. To emphasize again the necessity of consideration of aggravation and amelioration of the periods of distress, it is well to bear in mind the period of onset in the periodic manifestations of the symptom, the increase and the acme, the decrease, and the end of this is manifestation in the evaluation of symptoms. For instance, conditions such as cedrons, phagelia, sanguinaria, natramure, these remedies have a decided periodicity, and it is very important to consider also those symptoms that occur in recession or in the intervals between the period of aggravation. So he is explaining over there that periodicity also plays very important role. Natramure, sunrise to sunset aggravates, but it is from as sun goes on increasing, the headache goes on increasing, it reaches at the top, and whenever sun starts decreasing, the headache decreases. So this is one thing one should not miss. This is very important where you get such types of symptoms. Certain remedies, for example, cedron is very specific for periodicity. There is one remedy, cinchona, with which homeopathy was evolved. The remedy has very specific, again, periodicity. So those symptoms which are very specific, periodical, becomes characteristic. And to conclude chapter, what he says in last paragraph, these are but few of the conditions confronting the homeopathic physician as if he would cure his patients. And he should learn early to evaluate symptoms because symptoms are the sole expression of internal disturbance. And it's only by the proper understanding of the expressions in disease and or and an equal knowledge of the condition as expressed in the proving that we can apply our guiding law similia similibus curantur intelligently and for the benefit of our patient. So to conclude chapter, what he says that there are certain conditions with which you can find it out which symptom is important and which symptom is not important, which is characteristic, which is common, which is general, which is particular, which is mental general than physical general. So accordingly, once you understand the value of the symptoms after by analyzing, then you can come to the right remedy. And for that purpose, it is so much necessary to reach to analyze the case and evaluate the case. So very fantastic approach which he has explained over there by giving many examples and many varieties of symptoms with which it is possible for everyone to understand the importance of each and every symptom in your case. So this chapter is the most important chapter from practical point of view, where we have learned many cases, many things regarding the case analysis. On Monday, we'll start with the chapter number 17, susceptibility. Again, a practical part because many times it helps in our case finding the potency in the case. So we'll start with the susceptibility chapter on next lecture. Today evening, we're going to learn one more polycrest from our Allen's keynotes, that is a creosote at 8:15. So be there with at 8:15 to learn something regarding the creosote with cases. Any queries there, we can have a chat, otherwise we'll conclude. So we'll conclude and we'll meet at 8:15. Thank you.